families, creating a lifetime of memories. Sadly, some families are denied these important moments due to the sad practice of alienation. These are families divided.
Sadly, too many know the pain and trauma associated with parental and grandparent alienation. Family Access, Fighting for Children's Rights, will present an important international virtual conference on October the 13th through the 15th, 2023. The conference, entitled Alienation, The Truth Regarding the Trauma and Abuse, will feature world-renowned experts in the field of alienation. You'll join the conference event coordinator, Elaine Cobb, and moderator, Megan Hunter, as they introduce you to keynote speaker, Dr. Edward Kruk. Plus, you'll hear important presentations from Dr. Joshua Coleman, Lisa Rothfuss, Dr. Mary Alvarez, Chris Smith, Bill Eddy, Dr. Noel Hunter, Dr. Sue Kornblum, Dr. William Burnett, Megan Hunter, and Jordan Traeger. Join the many attendees already securing their spot for the conference entitled Alienation, The Truth Regarding the Trauma and Abuse. For information, visit familyaccess.info for all the details. This special conference is being hosted by Family Access, Fighting for Children's Rights, Steel Partners Foundation, and PASCA, Parental Alienation is Child Abuse.
Divorce and co-parenting are a major life interruption for families, especially the kids, but also for parents and grandparents. And it's even worse in blame-filled, high-conflict cases. When parents engage in alienation by turning the kids against the other parent or grandparents, kids suffer. They're denied the opportunity to build the 4 big skills necessary for future resilience. New Ways for Families online class can help. Parents learn to use our popular BIF and EAR skills to calm the conflict and stop the hostile emails and texts. And we even have a class for kids and parents to learn together. Research shows a 75% improvement in joint parental decision-making after this course is taken, plus overall improvements for kids' well-being. Don't wait to make this affordable investment in your children's future and improve your well-being too. Start learning new ways for your family today at conflictplaybook.com.
Welcome to this week's episode of Families Divided TV. This week, we have with us Gil Freeman, who is founder and executive director of Watch Takes Courage. And this episode is really geared to those who are in the middle of a court battle. You may want to get pen and paper. It's going to be vitally important that you listen to what Gil has to say. And I hope many of you in other states in our country and possibly in around the world will start taking more action in this area. So I hope you'll really be on alert on this episode. I also want to let you know, full disclosure, Gil and I are very close personal friends. We became friends through the world of alienation many years ago, and we've worked very well together. We're more like a brother and sister. So if sometimes I slipped in this episode and call him brother, just understand that's what I call him all the time. But we are really honored to have him with us tonight. And Gil, I want to welcome you here with us. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, Elaine. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here with you. It's really a good opportunity for others to learn, the importance of court watching and really the things that we can do to improve our court system just by overseeing what our judiciary does.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to just jump right in and start asking questions. What inspired you to start Watch Takes Courage?
Well, like many people in the court system today, especially in the family court system, I was kind of ignorant to how things are done in court. And my only experience was in traffic court and watching, Judge Judy and Judge Wapner on television. So you just assume that courts had common sense, but in actuality, because a lot of people are troubled with the decisions that the executive branch does, and they're troubled with the decisions that the legislature does, and we just assume that the judiciary works the way it's supposed to, which makes no sense if you really think about it, because if we don't have complete confidence in the legislature and we don't have complete confidence in the executive branch, what makes us think that the judiciary isn't troubling at times? So my first experience with court watching was when I was involved in my own case, my own family law case, and I wasn't really confident in the job that my attorney was doing, and I couldn't afford to hire another attorney, so I had to start watching quick cases on my own to learn things how are done as a pro se litigant. And you don't get any of the courtesy of a professional, a legal professional, when you're a pro se litigant. So you really want to know all the rules of the court and statute and case law, because no one's going to help you. You'll get very little help. So like many people, my first experience was in family court, and I had no idea the troubling decisions that occur in courts until I was actually in the midst of my own case. And that's what inspired me to just watching other people's cases to learn tactics for my case, and just seeing the troubling decisions that were made. That's what inspired me to pursue court watching.
And I remember a lot of what you went through because we spoke about it regularly. And I know it's difficult, and it is for many of those watching, how difficult it is in so many ways, emotionally, mentally, sometimes physically, and the damage it's doing to their children. Why is court watching so important?
Court watching is a vital tool for ensuring government transparency and judicial accountability. The ultimate goal of court watching is to improve the public's faith in the judiciary by educating the public and public officials on the court process. And primarily what Watch Takes Courage does is we take the position of defending and advocating for for children and the falsely accused and families subjected to court proceedings.
Well, what types of cases do you observe?
Primarily, that's a good question. Primarily civil cases involving the falsely accused families and children that are subject to court proceedings. Children are completely dependent on the actions or inactions of adults. Where families are concerned, Watch Takes Courage does not really watch for parents. They're adults. They made their own decisions. They can pretty much handle it. But where children are concerned, they're reliant upon the actions or inactions of their parents, the actions or inactions of the judges, and the actions and inactions of lawyers, and actions and inactions of expert witnesses. So Watch Takes Courage is solely about protecting the normal range interests of children and the falsely accused, and their right to have both families involved in their lives, of course. We watch a lot of alienated families and or potentially alienated families. So, there's nothing more near and dear to our heart than that, than making sure that children have both families in their lives. That's
right. All children need their parents and their grandparents and all the other family members. That is absolutely correct.
Absolutely. And I would also say, Sister Elaine, that regrettably, there are not, when we do a lot of court watching, we don't see a lot of grandparents in proceedings. Now, maybe we're just missing those cases, because a lot of times we do random selection. So if we're not called upon, then we'll go out on our own and find troubling cases on our own. That's one of the best ways for people to familiarize themselves with the courts. Go out and look up cases, and particularly you want to look up messy cases. So you go to the courthouse, or a lot of times cases are available online. You go online, you look these cases up, and you find messy cases. If you're a pro se litigant, it also teaches you how to file your motions and how to file, actions that you might not otherwise be familiar with. So you never underestimate the availability of information in other cases and reviewing other cases, especially cases that are online.
Absolutely. So you really feel court watching makes a difference?
Absolutely. What many people don't realize is that court watching can save you tens of thousands of dollars. Watch takes carriers can't guarantee what a judge will decide, but seldom does common sense escape a judge presiding over proceedings attended by us. So I would say conservative estimates say that there are approximately 10% of court cases that are high conflict. I would say that that number is higher. If nearly 60% of marriages end in divorce, saying 10% is kind of a conservative estimate of high conflict cases. And I believe that if more people participate in court watching, we could probably reduce that number to 1% or less.
That would be awesome. What are the challenges of court watching?
One of the things that I absolutely discourage everyone from doing, and well, speaking as far as court watching, definitely do not court watch in the jurisdiction where you live. Because if you anger a judge and you're in that judge's jurisdiction, you may have to go before that judge one day. And that judge, typically judges will take exception to you being in their courtroom. So even if they seem friendly, they really don't appreciate the oversight of court watchers. As far as court watching itself, through gamesmanship, gaslighting, courts play on the ignorance of statutes, case law, and court rules. So you want to absolutely, you want to understand the court's rules and state law and state statutes, state statutes and case law for yourself. If you don't understand it, and a lot of times they'll let you gloss right over it and never explain to you what's going on. And that's where court watchers help, because when you miss whatever you miss and whatever your lawyer misses, and sometimes your lawyer may not miss it. Your lawyer is just, because one of the things that people don't understand is lawyers serve, first they serve themselves, then they serve the bar, then they serve the court, and then they serve the client. So you're fourth in line. And a lot of times they're looking out for the interests even of the other attorney before their own client's interests, just because they have to work with these people every day. So you have to understand your case is, while it's important to you, their career is important to them, and they don't want to anger the judge, and they don't want to anger another attorney to suffer any professional damage, to their career. Other challenges is just, a lot of times court watchers, they get emotional and they get too involved in the court case, and they sometimes they forget that they're in a courtroom and they should actually follow the judge's instructions, so they're not asked to leave and they're not even held in contempt. So, one of the things that I would say as far as organizing court watching, you want to make sure that you can't wear anything that's political. So you can't wear anything that makes a statement of any kind. So you want to typically, what we'll do so that the judge gets the point is we'll all wear the same clothing, and which of course the colors for Watch Takes Courage is black and white for because we consider ourselves to be the bees of the courtroom, and one bee alone isn't a threat. But when you see a lot of bees, then that could potentially be a problem. But the other thing is courts will manipulate times. So that's very challenging. Courts will they'll schedule a court date, and if they know there's going to be court watchers there, they'll reschedule the court date before you get there, or they'll just to see if they can inconvenience you, or if there's going to be a sentencing, they will give you the sentencing after maybe on another date. They'll say, the judge will say, okay, I'm going to withhold my decision and think about it, and I'll come back on such and such a date, just to see if court watchers could come back. So when you organize, you want to make sure that your court watchers are your most reliable ones are the ones that you use last. You use the most unreliable court watchers first. That way, the reliable ones, say, hey, so-and-so was supposed to show up, they didn't show up. Can you come in? So always save the reliable ones for last, so that because their time is most precious.
Absolutely. Do they allow you to record in these proceedings?
Most courts do not allow you to record. It's prohibited unless you receive permission by the court. In Georgia, we file what's called a Rule 11 for magistrate court, a Rule 22 for Superior Court, and a Rule 13 for juvenile court. And very often, these are not approved, especially in family court matters. So at that point, that just becomes court watch become that much more important, because you have to be there. You have to be there just so that the court is aware that even though we can't record, there's still a presence there, and we can still spread the story. Typically we tell people when you come to watch, expect to stay, because chances are there's a very good chance that the request for permission to record will be denied.
Now, when you say spread the story, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, one of the main things that if a lot of times we can't get media attention. If you get 30 or more court watchers, there's a good chance, especially beyond 30 court watchers, there's a good chance that you'll get the media's attention. But if you don't, you really want to have a social media following. And at Watch Takes Courage, we have almost 50,000 subscribers, not really subscribers, but followers. And they follow, whether it be Twitter or Facebook or whatever form of social media. We have approximately 50,000 followers. And when a judge isn't making reasonable decisions, we make it publicly known.
Okay. Well, what states do you operate in?
Right now we operate solely in Georgia, just because of the expense of it. We try to keep expenses down. And right now it isn't plausible for us to actually go to other states, but we are setting up to go to Texas, Florida, and the Carolinas, just the Southeast region, just because we understand the courts in the South a little better. And we think that those are the courts that we can work with the best.
Well, is court watching the same in every state?
Court watching is not the same in every state. And the reason for that is that judges are elected in different ways. So say in Georgia, we have the judges have 4-year terms, right? So you vote for a judge. So everybody, what the average person thinks is, okay, the judge gets elected by the people. Not so. Oftentimes that is not the case, especially in Georgia. What happens is, to circumvent an open seat and having an open election for a judge, what happens is a judge will retire midterm. And when the judge retires midterm, that judge will leave his seat open for the governor to appoint someone to that seat. And now that person is now an incumbent, and that is an incumbent judge. And that person gets the professional courtesy of all the lawyers that could potentially run against him. As an incumbent, no one will run against him, especially in small rural towns. They will not run against them. In larger municipalities and larger counties, you may get opposition. But in the smaller rural counties, if you lose an election to a judge, it's pretty much career suicide. There's a good chance that you'll never win a case in that judge's court again, and you might as well move to another county. And that's really sad. That's not really the intent of how things should work. In other states, we have they have 10-year terms. So a judge is going to be in place for 10 years. That's a very long time to have a judge in place. Other places, other states, they have retention judges. Retention judges are appointed by the governor or the executive branch, and they are approved by the legislature, and the legislature will give them. And once they're approved by the legislature, they'll get like a 10-year term, and then at the end of that 10-year term for a retention judge, the judge has to go for an election, and the citizens decide whether or not he keeps his job. So they whether he's retained as a judge or whether he's not. And if the judge is not, he or she, and if the judge is not retained, then guess what? The governor, the executive branch appoints another judge, and the legislature approves that judge, and the people never actually vote for the judge. So those are things that escape a lot of people. They don't understand how judges get their positions. And to me, I believe that judges should be term limited. It's not like the legislature. It's not like the executive branch where you have to build up relationships to get things done. You don't have to build up relationships to get laws passed because you're not in there for years. Judges they're there making decisions. They don't have to build relationships for years to make decisions based on statute and case law. So they should be limited, especially if they're appointed by a governor. They should not be able to serve more than 10 years. And you have judges that serve 30 years or more. And that's just with that much authority for 30 years. I can't remember the specific quote, but I think it goes that absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I hate to use the word corrupt, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we don't want to give judges that much power.
No, absolutely not. Well, are there any risk involved when court watching?
Fortunately, and not everybody really realizes this, but fortunately, the rewards far exceed the risks. But most people are too fearful to ever find out. Regrettably, there could be many risks involved with court watching where judges are not accommodating. Even, some courtrooms may even be hostile. We advise court watchers to follow court's instructions to the letter. So watchers aren't asked to leave or placed in contempt of court or anything like that. But potential risks include being arrested if the court finds that you're disruptive, and whether or not you're disruptive can be subjective. So if some judges they're annoyed by your presence and the whole. So I say, we at Courtwatch Takes Courage, we never let anyone go in a courtroom alone. It's kind of like having a swim buddy when you go swimming. Everyone goes with at least one other person when they go to a courtroom, and preferably 3 other people. That way, it's not, the full story can be told by at least 3 people and corroborated, basically. The other risk involved is your attorney may get cold feet, doesn't want to anger the judge because he's got to see the judge with other cases and other people, and he doesn't want to lose on his other cases. So your attorney may quit. And if your attorney does quit, there's things that you can do if you want to retain an attorney. But do you want to retain an attorney that quit? But we had one instance where an attorney quit. We were working in collaboration with another group of court watchers, and the attorney quit within a week of the trial. And the ethics rules don't allow that. So what happened was the judge actually allowed for a continuance. So the attorney filed for a continuance. The judge allowed the continuance, and then the attorney would be could withdraw outside of 1 week before the trial, because 1 week before the trial they can't withdraw, but 30 days from the trial they can still withdraw. So the judge allowed a 30-day continuance so that this attorney could withdraw, and we actually called him in it, and we called them on it, and we also called the judge on it, and the judge took heed to what we were saying, made the attorney stay, and the trial actually still went fairly favorably for the person involved. Never as good as we would like it to be, but it would, in our opinion, it would have been a lot worse had we not been there. He couldn't get a fair shake the entire time, and usually that's why we're there, because litigants aren't getting a fair shake. And like I said earlier, primarily, if the litigant isn't getting a fair shake, the children aren't getting a fair shake, and that's what it's all about. It's the children and the grandchildren making sure that they're being fairly represented and their interests are being fairly represented. And because best interest of child is subjective. It's up to whoever's perception of what that is. The other thing is that the final risk that I would say, and it's not really the final risk, there are other risks, but one of the risks that I would say is the judge may rule against you. And if the judge rules against you, that may happen the first time. But if you keep bringing us back, it's very likely that the tide will turn. Very few instances have I seen where court watching did not ultimately prove beneficial.
That's great. Do you ever encourage filing complaints against the judges?
Absolutely. Very rarely do complaints go anywhere, but you have to treat them kind of like Russian roulette. Maybe the judge's career will take a hit, maybe it won't. But you won't know if there's a proverbial bullet in the chamber unless you actually file the complaint. But when you file the complaint, you want to make sure you enumerate multiple errors, and enumerate multiple incidents where the judge is compromising judicial canons, and that includes multiple errors. So, because if you only do 1 or 2 errors, that'll probably just get waved off. You got to have. It's kind of like setting bear traps. You want to have as many bear traps as possible. He may not step in, or even proverbial landmines. You want to have as many as possible. He may sidestep some of them, but can he sidestep all of them? Probably not. So one thing I would like to mention about that, though, when you file, especially in Georgia, if you file a complaint, you can't talk about it. Most jurisdictions, you can't talk about the complaint unless there's actually something filed against the judge. If an investigation is started or the investigation concludes and charges come up against the judge, that's when you can discuss it. If you discuss it prior to that in the state of Georgia, you can be charged with a misdemeanor. So if you're gonna file a complaint, and don't take this as legal advice, because it's not. I'm not an attorney. You have to speak to an attorney for legal advice. But I would caution anyone to not discuss any complaint that they have against a judge.
Yeah, we see a lot of that. I know I do out there in the social media world. Moms and dads both are just slamming them all over the place, and talking about their cases online. And, a lot of the experts we've had on the webinars and Families Divided, they've discouraged that, blasting everything on media, because that can come back and bite you in court. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. Anytime you disclose anything to the public that is not public knowledge, you're not going to ingratiate yourself with the court or with the employees of the court, and oftentimes it will come back and bite you.
Yeah, and the main concern is you're doing the best you can for the children and grandchildren. Don't worry about yourself, worry about them. That's the main thing.
And that's it. You always have to remember, you can't take anything personally. Courts are about reason without passion.
Yeah.
And you have to remain reasonable at all times, because once you allow emotion and passion to take over, that's when you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
And then at that point, once you get yourself in trouble, now you're not benefiting the children, and you're feeding into the narrative that they're saying about you. So you want to avoid feeding into the narrative that they're saying about you, and just keep everything well within reason, so that over time you will show that you are the reasonable parent.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us about any notable cases you've observed? Things you can talk about here?
I can talk about a few cases from the past. There's actually a lot of them. There was one case, and we watch for children. We don't watch for moms or dads. So if I say mom or I say dad, you might as well take it as me saying parent A and parent B. So there was an instance. Some of these stories are really interesting. They're interesting, but they're sad. A lot of us think that we're unique, and our situation is unique, but in actuality, someone is experiencing what you're experiencing, probably in almost the same way that you're experiencing it. And so that's one of the things to always keep in mind. But one of the stories that I'll share is there was a 16-year-old girl. This is a story that I heard from actually from my daughter's therapist, and he discussed a case that the parents were going through a high conflict divorce, and the 16-year-old daughter, the older daughter, and the reason why I remember this one is because it's very similar to mine, but without discussing or getting into mine, but the 16-year-old daughter decided to stay with dad, and the younger daughter was convinced to stay with mom. So after a while, they argued custody, and the 16-year-old, both kids ended up going with mom. Then the 16-year-old ended up changing her mind and going back with dad. So they went back to court about it, and they argued the points, and the mom's attorney said, "Look, this person's 5'2" tall. What harm could she possibly do to her children?" And it's really a sad story. And so the 16-year-old was end up that her grandmother convinced her to go back and live with her mom. And when she went back to live with her mom, she ended up committing suicide. And that was after they had argued that, the mom was 5'2". What harm could she possibly do? And it's really sad, but people don't understand that your mind has the same response to psychological abuse as it does to physical or sexual abuse or any kind of physical trauma. So your mind, it has the same chemical response. Your body has the same chemical response to psychological abuse as it does to physical abuse and sexual abuse. So that was one of the saddest stories that I've ever heard. But one of the ones that we actually saw court watching, there was a 9-year-old that was in the custody of her father, and the father had the older son. The older son was aligned with the father, and the daughter was go along to get along. So she aligned herself with her father and her older brother, and the mother was being alienated. And the mother was very reasonable and very rational about everything, and she was doing her best. And this is a case that we watched. It was a random case that we had selected, so neither the parties were aware that we were there or why we were there. The judge knew that we were there. The court workers knew why we were there, but they all understood. The parties had no idea why we were there because they weren't familiar with our work. So the daughter was about 9 years old, and the case went on for about 2 years, and the daughter was wetting the bed. at 9 years old because she was just traumatized by her dad and her older brother. And she was chafing, and she was going to school chafed because she would get dressed to school. She wouldn't clean herself up. She'd get dressed and go to school. And when she, when over time, as she got older, she got to be 11 years old. She was becoming a young lady, so she developed, the biological things that young ladies develop. And she didn't feel comfortable talking to her father or her brother about it. So she was having, difficulties dealing with, becoming a young woman. And, but ultimately, because we were there, the judge saw through it and saw that she was going along to get along, and she was afraid to cross her dad and her brother. And the judge ultimately gave the brother was still 17. So the judge gave the brother to the father because he felt like it was too late. We believe that you never leave any child at any age in the care of an abuser. Doesn't matter if it's physical abuse or if it's sexual abuse. Do you still leave the child with an abuser just based on their age? You don't. So if it's just because of psychological abuse doesn't mean the damage can be any less. Just evident by the case I just told you about with the 16-year-old committing suicide. So the young lady ended up with her mom. The older son ended up with the father, and I think that was the best under the circumstances. That was the best outcome they could possibly get. The mother was happy and I think that was best for the young lady. For the pre-adult. She was still young. She was 11 years old, but she needed her mom at that time to help her with those stages of her life. And she still needed her dad in her life, of course. We advocate for both parents to be in the lives, but in this instance, it was best for the mother to have custody, and that was obvious. But the judge had took 2 years to come to this decision. That's where the injustice occurred to the child. It should have never taken 2 years for him to figure this out. And if we hadn't stayed on him, because we saw all the cases, and if we hadn't stayed there to view these cases, we have no idea what the outcome would be. He probably would have kept her with the father and the brother. I hope I'm not getting, too sidetracked or the stories or dragging the stories out too long. But to me, they're fascinating stories, and they 9 times out of 10 we have great outcomes. So I got a few other stories I could share with you. I don't know how many you'd like to hear, but there was another instance. This was also another one that actually benefited mom. So the mom, the mother was a young mother, and the father was kind of from an affluent family. But in the state of Georgia, which is kind of antiquated laws, sister, are you familiar with legitimation?
No.
Okay, so in Georgia, you have to legitimize children, and all that is saying that the father, you test the father and say that this is the father, and the children can inherit from the father, and he's legally declared the father. So signing the birth certificate means that all you have is the right to pay child support. But as far as custody decisions and the likes, you have to in Georgia, you have to legitimate the children. So the child was not even legitimated. It was an infant, was not legitimated. The father declared the mother unstable and took the child away. And the child was never declared his to do it. So anyone else, if it hadn't been an affluent family, anyone else it would have been an Amber Alert, and it would have been a huge problem. In this court, for whatever reason, it wasn't a problem. The court left the child in the care of you'd have to file, I guess, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, but I guess they would have to file a writ of habeas corpus. But the mother's attorney decided to file for a change of venue because she felt like they couldn't get a fair shake in that courtroom. So, but because we were there, the judge was very reluctant. Apparently, the family was very affluent and had very good connections with the county. The judge was very reluctant, but he transferred the case to another county. And that was largely because Watch Takes Courage was there watching and making sure that the judge made sound decisions. And if he didn't, he understood that, they would be publicized.
That's good. Well, you guys do some awesome work, brother. And I'm so grateful for what you're doing down there in Georgia. And how can people contact you if they want to start something in their states, which we hope they do? How Rick, we've got your website underneath your name, here. So that's how you want them to contact you, correct?
That would be the easiest way. They can email me at gil@watchtakescourage.org, or they can go to watchtakescourage.org and fill out the forms and just basically see what we're about and see how we can help them start court watching in their area. One thing that I would say that is important, when you court watch, you want to analyze the judges that you see. There's telling signs of how effective that your court watching will be. Judges under 50, they plan to be judges for a while. And a lot of times they have a different perspective on life and they've experienced divorce themselves. So within their own families. So those judges under 50, typically they're seeking higher judgeships. So they want to go to appellate court. They want to go to, if they're not in superior court already, if they're a magistrate court, they want to go to superior court or they want to go to Supreme Court. So they don't like bad publicity. That's the main thing. Judges, when you're in their court watching, they don't know if you're part of a government agency. They don't know if you're part of the news media. They don't know if you're a voter. At the very least, you're a voter. So they know they don't want voters going around, inspiring other people to run against them. So older judges can be kind of difficult. They care about their legacy, but they can be kind of stubborn, especially if it's a senior judge. Now, I'm not sure, if you're aware of what a senior judge is, sister.
Yes.
Yeah, so in Georgia, senior judges are appointed. They're not elected. They're never elected. They're appointed. So a lot of times, if a judge doesn't want to handle a case, very rarely will a judge recuse himself in Georgia. But if they don't want to handle a case, what they'll do is they'll all recuse themselves and then allow a senior judge to take the case because the senior judge isn't subjected to voters. So now that senior judge can basically do the will of the favored party with that court. So that
great.
So things like that are important to understand when you're strategizing on how to observe proceedings. I think that's. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I was going to say, brother, I think it's important that everyone understands this doesn't just benefit you. By you stepping out, you're not only just learning for yourself, but you're helping others who are going through this. And it is important that those going through these situations in court can try to unify somewhat in working together to help others, not just yourself, because in return too, they can come around and help you as well. So it's important to work together with this. Do you guys do any kind of training or anything like that with them? Or suggestions on how they do this or anything like that?
Yes, we do a brief training course on what to do, do's and don'ts, and a brief overview of the rules of the court and superior court. So if you're going to superior court, we give you a brief overview of the uniform superior court rules. If you're going to magistrate court, same thing. We give you a brief overview of the uniform rules, or in juvenile court. We give you the things to watch for, the do's and don'ts. How to. Sometimes when you go to Court Watch, we have some very troubling courts in Georgia. There's some trouble, and I don't mind naming them. Out in Augusta, they have Richmond County and Columbia County are very troubling. What occurs out in those courts is very troubling. So with that, we try to prepare people. So when you go out to Richmond, if we send you to Richmond County, a lot of times people are traveling from different jurisdictions. We never encourage anybody to work out of the same jurisdiction that they live in. So if you're traveling to another jurisdiction like Richmond County and it's a long drive, we always encourage you to not only not stay in that county. So if you have to have an overnight stay at a hotel, stay at a hotel just outside of the county so that you're not in that judge's jurisdiction, just in case the court is that hostile, because there are times that it can be hostile. So you want to make sure that you don't give them any reason. So if you understand how procedure is and how the court works and what the court's expectations are, then you'll do a much better job meeting those expectations if you're trained and you understand your do's and your don'ts.
Okay. Well, this has been very helpful, and very, I hope, beneficial to many. So if you are in the middle of court, which hundreds, if not millions of you are, please take an interest in this and get on alert with it and contact Gil Freeman and let him help you in your state in getting stuff started. And Watch Takes Courage is a very important organization. So please take the time to contact Gil and let him help you. Brother, I'm so thankful for all you're doing, and I know your heart. I personally know your heart and your love to help others, and seeing that children and grandchildren are with all their family. And I love you and appreciate all that you do. And I hope this really takes off and many people will be in contact with you so we can get more done in helping these children, because that's the ones that matter. So thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for all you do again. Much appreciated.
No, thank you, sister, for what you do, because people don't really understand all that you do. You are amazing. And I really don't know how you do what you do. You deal with all different kinds of personalities, and you help everyone out as best you can. And you put an amazing amount of. I've never seen anyone. I've met a lot of people doing what we do, myself included. I've never seen anyone who does more than you do. So I really appreciate you and everything that you do. And I appreciate you giving me the time to be on with you today. I hope that the viewers will find some of the information helpful. And we didn't get to cover everything. So if they reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to give them more information on how to do it and what to do and how to actually train each other and be there for each other. One of the things that we often get lost in, we get lost in our own case, but we're all in this together. So if we all help each other, we can change this around tomorrow. There is nothing there's no amount of money that you pay any kind of attorney that will turn your case around faster than court watchers. Yeah, it's a risk. And the first time you have court watchers there, it might be a problem, and you might take a setback. But I promise you, if you stick with it and you have the court watchers keep coming, that judge is going to turn around, and that court is going to turn around, and you're going to see the benefits. And more importantly, your children or your grandchildren are going to see the benefits.
And I know you've been doing this a lot of years, so you know what you're talking about. So, well, thank you too for all your love and support for me that you've given me over all these years. I couldn't have done a whole lot of what I do without you. You know that. So thank you.
Oh, I know the thousands of emails you put out week in and week out for years. And I'm practically speechless because I have no idea how you do everything that you do. But I know that you have saved so many people a lot of heartache and frustration just by doing what you do. So, and you do things that you don't necessarily benefit from, and but you do it so that others can improve their lives and improve the lives of their children and their grandchildren. So I know I appreciate what you do, and I know a lot of other people do too.
Well, we both know the pain, so we just want to help as much as we can. But again, thank you so much, and I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm going to bring you back again. I'm sure, as soon as you are available, and that will be helpful, because I'm sure we're going to get a lot of traction from this episode. So thank you again, and God bless you for all you do, brother.
Thank you, sister, and love to you and Chester.
And love to you, as you know. So we'll see you soon, we hope. And I want to say thank you all to who have watched this episode. Please share it with others all over the world. Again, this needs to be everywhere, not just in a few states or just the United States. It needs to be all over the world. This is important, very important. This helps the children and grandchildren. That's what this is all about. Not the adults, it's the children and the grandchildren. So we look forward to our next episode, and we'll be happy to have Gil back whenever it is convenient for him. So we'll say thank you and God bless.
God bless you, sister. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jordan Traeger from Wisselman Harunian Family Law. I'm going to be doing a presentation on parental alienation cases from a legal perspective with a focus on abuse and trauma. So just a little bit about my presentation. It's going to be broken up basically into two parts. The first part is going to be focusing on parental alienation from a legal perspective. And then it will turn to the second part, which is the severe long-term psychological impact on children who are the victims of parental alienation, and specifically how to present that information to a court and to a judge to make the judge aware of the serious consequences of either inaction in a parental alienation case or failing to act with haste in a parental alienation case. So generally, from a legal perspective, I would be improving parental alienation. And by the way, I think the courts are starting to finally recognize parental alienation. The larger issue that I'm starting to encounter is the fact that they're unsure what to do about it. But some of the issues that I'll be presenting is direct and circumstantial proof of parental alienation from an evidentiary perspective. The court's approach to in-camera interviews, that's when a child and his or her attorney is seen by a judge in chambers. The role of the attorney for the child and the child's therapist, which is very important in a parental alienation case. How the courts weigh the best interest analysis in a parental alienation case specifically, as opposed to a general custody case, and how custody may or may not be determined in that type of case, and how and when the courts consider and use various remedies to alleviate the pernicious effects of parental alienation, specifically the use of no contact orders, reunification therapy, and something called team therapy. So specifically regarding the severe long-term psychological impact on children who are victims of parental alienation, my presentation is going to focus on the negative consequences, the negative outcomes, I should say, suffered by victims of parental alienation. And specifically, some of these outcomes, these negative outcomes include children, and I'm just going to read this off very quickly, children suffering from, quote, a shorter lifespan, depression, anxiety, social withdrawal, aggression, acting out, low self-esteem, insecure attachments, substance abuse disorders, fears and phobias, the inability to trust themselves and others, poor academic performance, poor physical health, neurological damage, the inability to think critically, and developmental delays. Those are all possible negative outcomes due to parental alienation when the courts either do not act quickly enough or if they don't act at all. So I look forward to seeing you at the presentation, and thank you very much.
Next week on Families Divided TV, Elaine Simmons and Jeff Morgan share from parents of adult, estranged, and alienated children.